Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What is ARC Finance doing to promote microfinancing for clean water and clean energy projects in many areas of the world? Today we're going to focus on this interesting organization and a lot of its projects. My guest today is Ms. Niki Armacost, and Ms. Armacost is the Managing Director of ARC Finance. She has over 30 years of experience in development activities in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and also in Asia. Niki, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you being with me today. ARC Finance, it sounds like a very interesting organization. Let's find out what it is. When was it formed? Why was it formed?
ARC was formed in 2008. It's a not-for-profit organization that is a 501c3, and we formed ARC because we realized that there was a missing gap, that poor people didn't have access to clean energy and water, and what they really didn't have access to was the financing they needed to make those purchases. So we formed ARC in order to solve this problem of energy poverty.
And how many countries, I know you have dozens of projects, but how many countries are you operating in?
We're working in India, in Nepal, in Kenya, Uganda, Haiti, so 5 countries.
5 countries,
yeah.
Okay. And how many projects roughly do you have, just a ballpark figure?
We have about 20 organizations that we're working with. So that it's not exactly 20 projects, but 20 organizations.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an estimated number of the populations that you affect every year? I know you have clean water, clean energy, a variety of other things, but do you have a ballpark figure of how many people you touch their lives?
We've benefited about 4 million household members, and specifically we have about 780,000 clients. About 95% of them are women who have been able to access loans for clean energy as a result of the partnerships we have with microfinance organizations in developing countries.
Mm-hmm. And our viewers can go to your website at www.arcfinance.org
yes.
to get more information about what we're talking about today.
Absolutely.
You, on your website, I had a chance to take a quick look at it, you have the ARC approach. What is the ARC approach?
Well, our approach is that we consider ourselves a partner of all of our organizations that we work with. So we work directly with those organizations. We help them to make linkages to other kinds of entities that can support them in this work. So for example, energy product companies or investors. And the essence of our approach is to really get inside that organization, understand what its clients need, understand what works for that organization, and develop an approach that works for them directly. That was
Sounds like you have a lot of partners involved in this, quite a few. In fact, this might be a good segue right into that. Who are some of your key partners?
So our development partners include organizations like USAID and the Inter-American Development Bank, the Multilateral Investment Facility, as well as the World Bank. And those have been the organizations that have provided the bulk funding. But we also have partners that are producers of energy products, so companies like Greenlight Planet, D-Light, as well as microfinance organizations that are the direct financial providers. So our partners are really quite a range of institutions.
Sounds like a real potpourri of folks with sort of mutual interest, but still diverse to a large degree.
Exactly.
Again, going back to your website, you have 5 functional areas. One is technical assistance.
Right.
What does this mean, and what are some examples of projects in the technical assistance area?
So technical assistance is where my team works directly with a microfinance organization to help that organization develop loan products that will enable a poor person to pay for a solar lantern or a solar home system or an improved cook stove. So they're right there inside that organization providing the nuts and bolts advice that's needed for that organization to develop a commercially viable loan product for its client base. And it also includes things like doing market assessments to make sure that there's real demand, doing capacity building work with staff, doing risk analysis, all of those kinds of activities.
Mm-hmm. And are these programs or projects you have in all the countries where you're operating, or
yeah.
like are they in Haiti or?
Yes, in Haiti it's actually quite interesting. There our partner is a global remittance organization, and we help them develop a product for their clients, helping them to leverage their network of sales agents on the ground in Haiti to sell clean energy products directly to consumers. So it's not something you would typically think of with a remittance company, but it's been very effective. They've sold over 90,000 products through that mechanism.
Mm-hmm. And do the people to whom they're selling the products, do they get microloans for this, or do they have the funds available to participate on their own, or how does that work?
So in most countries, in India, for example, the clients are taking out microloans in order to be able to pay for these products. So a solar light might cost $30, a solar home system might cost $150, and people would take out a loan in order to purchase those products, and then they would pay it back in small increments over time. Mm-hmm. So it would work in the way that a typical microfinance loan would work, except it's earmarked for a green energy product.
I see. When I hear microloans, I always think of Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank. I think that's sort of the foundation, the benchmark, if you will, the gold standard as far as launching this whole microfinance approach. Do you look at the Grameen Bank? Are you involved with the Grameen Bank, or do you are involved with Muhammad Yunus, or do you just look at what they've done and sort of get some ideas and move your organization forward by using some of their information?
Well, Muhammad Yunus has been an inspiration to all of us who've been in microfinance, and I know him well. He's a really marvelous person. And he set up, with somebody called Deepal Barua, an organization in Bangladesh called Grameen Shakti, which is a microfinance organization that does asset financing. So it provides only loans for clean energy products. So it's a little bit different than what we're doing with our partners in India and Nepal and other places, but it's certainly been the inspiration for a lot of this work. And they tested a lot of business models and worked out what works and what doesn't work, and we've been able to benefit from all of that knowledge and ratchet up the impact.
Mm-hmm. Another generic area you have is advisory services. What is that?
So advisory services is working with top management in an organization and really going through the thought process of what business model works. And very typically it involves deep risk analysis. So understandably, in the beginning, an organization is skeptical about whether this kind of an intervention will work. And so we go through all of the risks that they've identified, and then we tell them about other risks we know of that others have advanced, and we go through it and help them to think it through. Basically, it's problem solving with another organization.
Mm-hmm. Now, you say you're looking at the risks and what they may be. What are some of the risks that you run into? You can't identify all of them, I'm sure, but are there certain ones that come to mind immediately?
So the most typical risk that a microfinance organization will raise is the technology risk. They don't understand solar products. They don't know these companies. They don't know if they're reputable. And microfinance organizations have been in business for many, many years, and the thing that is most valuable is their reputation. So they want to make sure that they don't go into business with an organization that's problematic in some way, that's dodgy. And so what we help them to do is to assess the technology risk. We also help them to assess the risk of client non-payment. So that's the other big thing that they're really concerned with. And then there are many other kinds of risks. There's political risk, there are risks of disasters happening. All of those kinds of risks are very typical risks that are part of everyday business in many parts of the world.
When we were talking about risk in microfinance, as I recall, the Grameen Bank, they had some huge payback, like 98% or 99% of and mostly women that they loaned money to, paid them back, and the majority of them, as I understand it, did very well in setting up their own small businesses. Do you find that to be the case?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So there's the repayment. Repayment is one measure, and another is portfolio risk. So what is the risk of people not paying? With our partners, it's 0.1%. So there's almost 100% chance that they're going to repay, which is as good as it gets. So there are commercial banks that are quite jealous of these statistics.
I'm surprised every banker in the world is not asking you what you're doing here. They'd love a repayment rate like that.
Well, it's becoming popular.
Of course, it's right. Very, very certain of that.
Yeah.
The other generic area you have is linkages, and we've been talking about that to some degree. What are linkages, though?
So in something like energy lending, you have three things that you need to make sure happen well. So one is you need the right technology. You need to get that technology into the hands of the people who need it. So you need to deal with distribution, and then the third thing is finance. Sometimes organizations can do all of that themselves, but normally what happens is you need a partnership. So there needs to be a partnership with a technology company. And so one of the things that we do is we help microfinance organizations assess which energy technology company is going to be the right fit for them. So that's one of the linkages. If the pilot works very nicely and everyone's very happy, then you have the situation of wanting to scale. And so then the next set of linkages are with investors. So what we do then is we bring in triple bottom line investors. They've managed to address the issue of people, they've managed to address the issue of profit, and now they want to address the issue of planet. So we offer them, through this possibility, the opportunity of investing in microfinance organizations that have a triple bottom line result that they can show, triple bottom line impact at the end of the day.
And that's what we're saying with triple bottom line. You're talking about planet, the bottom line, and what was the first one?
So the first is people. How many people are we reaching? So we're talking about millions of people. So that's a really serious people impact number. Profit, so it has to be a business model that works, that's profitable. And then the third thing is planet. So we're doing something that actually makes a difference. It's reducing CO2 and it's improving sustainability. So it's triple bottom line, which is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
It's a great thing if you're an investor to be able to talk about at a dinner party.
There you go. Very good. Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We would invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com and review some of our previous programs. Take a look at them, and also if you're involved with any type of a PBS or community access television station, we would encourage you to download the programs and share them with your audiences. But Global Connections is not limited just to television outlets or any other type of outlet, but anybody with an educational institution, or if you're involved with any group, be it a group that has a website that would like to share the programs, please feel free to do so. Global Connections Television is provided free of charge as a public service to help us better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today we're taking a look at ARC Finance, and this is a very unique organization that's providing microfinancing to folks in various areas of the world. My guest today is an expert on this project. My guest today is Ms. Niki Armacost, who is the Managing Director of ARC Finance. Niki, another rubric area that you have is innovation funding. You've talked about that to a certain degree. What are we talking about with innovation funding, though?
So what we decided when we first began this work was that we had a great idea, but we weren't sure 100% that it would work. And so what we did with our donors was we pooled together what we call catalytic funding to be able to use that funding to help partner organizations do this experiment. So rather than use really expensive money, which had to be paid back, we pulled together a little bit of grant funding to seed the idea, to act as a little bit of a carrot to encourage involvement. And we were very delighted. There were a bunch of organizations that wanted to work with us without the catalytic funding. So that felt like a very serious endorsement of the work.
So the catalytic funding was a catalyst to do other things. Do you have an example of a project like that, or something specific of something that launched that we could talk about?
Absolutely. So the largest microfinance organization in India is an organization called Bandhan Bank. They have 11 million clients. And to get Bandhan involved in this project was really the cherry on top of the cake. You know, if Bandhan agreed to do this, then we thought that other institutions would follow. But Bandhan's a very conservative organization, and so they were intrigued but not willing to try the experiment. And so we ended up offering a $100,000 grant to seed that work with Bundan, and it ended up being hugely successful. They now talk about their energy program with pride, and it's something that they can scale up. If they end up scaling even to 5% of their client base, it ends up being, you know, hundreds and hundreds up to millions of people. So that's an example.
They reach a large audience.
Very
They
large
serve a
audience.
very large audience.
It's larger than the entire population of Norway.
There you go. And the last one is knowledge products. What are we talking about there?
Yeah, so a lot of these are available on our website, and our belief is that these models that we've come up with are quite interesting, they're replicable, and we want to share them with as many people as possible. So we produce videos, we produce fact sheets, we produce case studies, we produce reports, we do webinars, and we try and make that available to as many people as possible. So that this can be expanded into other country contexts.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, without going into the methodology, how do you gauge or how do you measure your effectiveness to make sure you're reaching your populations, you're achieving your goals?
So we actually take monitoring really seriously, and one of the things that you can see on the website is what we call our impact fact sheet, where we record the achievements that we've had with our partners. All of our partners report to us according to a set of metrics that we think are important. So some of them relate to reaching certain populations of people. We segregate out women. It's very important for us to know how many women are reached, how many women have received finance. Some of the data points relate to financial performance of the institution. So, for example, a less than 1% portfolio at risk. And some of the data points relate to the environmental impact. So, how many megawatts equivalent have been installed? It's about 6 megawatts, which is like a small solar field, through all these tiny devices, which is amazing, and how much CO2 has been reduced. So, and we also keep statistics on training that's happened, so we can report back on the number of hours that various categories of people have been trained.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your 2+ decades that you've been involved in development activities in various parts of the world, are there major geopolitical and or physical activities or events that have posed a challenge or posed challenges to you as you move forward with your operation?
Absolutely. I think one of the key things that we've been dealing with is addressing the issue of income inequality through our work. We've also had to deal with the financial crises that have gone on in various countries that we've worked in. In India, the issue of demonetization was a very specific issue that affected us. But, you know, specifically in terms of this work, I think the major issue is the reliance on dirty fuels around the world and the problem of subsidies. So subsidizing dirty fuels makes it really difficult for the clean energy sector to move forward. And so I think those are kind of some of the fundamental issues that we've dealt with. For me personally, the US pulling out of the Paris Accord was really a disappointment. But I feel as if I'm seeing work being done on individual level, municipal level, regional levels to address that in the US and certainly in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the United States is the only country in the world not part of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, right. But still large numbers of governors, mayors in the United States and around the world, not just in this country, right. are moving forward to achieve the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. So there's movement, but the U.S. is on the sidelines to a large degree as far as dealing with the climate change. You're talking about subsidizing fuel, and we see there's a debate raging now with coal-fired utility plants and that type of thing, and coal has been subsidized forever.
Absolutely.
Since day one we used coal, but now we're moving more to gas, to oil, and to clean energy, which is where we need to be. How quickly can we get to that? We really need to move into green energy completely if we're going to try to slow down climate change, or we're not going to stop it, but maybe retard it to some degree. How quickly can we get there?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think it depends on the will of politicians to actually implement laws that will encourage and incentivize that change. I think some countries will move faster than others. In the US, I don't think that the lead will be taken at the federal level. I think it's more likely to happen at a state level or even at a municipal level. In my tiny village, we passed a resolution saying that we were in favor of the Paris Accord, irrespective of how anyone else felt in the country. So I think we're running out of time. So I think it's really important to move in that direction quickly. But I don't know that I could predict how soon it will happen. That's the question of the ages.
Exactly. The wallet and the will have to be there
exactly.
if we're going to make any headway into this.
Well, I mean, in terms of the wallet and the will, it actually makes fundamental economic sense to make these shifts. There's huge savings to be made. And so one of the things that I think we're seeing quietly in the background is large corporates making decisions to move in terms of energy efficiency and to cut costs by relying on fuel which is renewable, because then they're not paying out on a regular basis. And so we're seeing these individual decisions made by corporates. We're seeing investors starting to require triple bottom line investment. So I think capital markets will actually push us in that direction.
You're absolutely right. Corporations are seeing it's in their best interest not only to be good corporate socially responsible entities within a society, but it also improves their bottom line.
Absolutely.
And it improves their employees' situation, their health of their employees, and a variety of other things. What can shareholders do to help move this discussion forward?
Well, I think shareholders can insist that their investments, if they're impact investors, they can insist that there's a triple bottom line investment. Shareholders can, of course, complain to top management about practices they don't like. They can demand divestment if they like. My view in my work is that carrots work better than sticks. I try, if I can, to push solutions that involve carrots rather than sticks. And so, making the business case to investors and having investors and shareholders demand that internally, I think is what makes most sense.
As we look around the world, there's so many countries moving towards clean energy. I mean, completely. Some cities are 100% totally using clean energy, as I understand it, a handful of maybe 30 or 40, but that's still progress. But what are countries like Norway, Iceland, Costa Rica, Denmark doing to do this? They're all doing different things probably, but to reach that goal. Yeah,
I think they're setting targets. They want to, be 50% renewable or 100% renewable. New York State has set a target as well. They're pushing energy consumption mechanisms, like, for example, vehicles. They're pushing for electric vehicles. They're creating infrastructure that makes it easy for those vehicles to be charged. So if you have an electric vehicle but you can't charge it up anywhere, it's going to be very difficult to push that agenda. So having electric charging stations all over the place, wherever you go, in the same way as you might have a normal petrol station. These are the kinds of things that I think make a difference. Creating subsidies instead of for traditional fuel, for modern fuel, like, for example, renewable energy, promoting geothermal, if that's possible. So all of these, I think, are initiatives that countries can do. Doing energy audits on municipal buildings, on homes, creating incentives for people. All of those things, I think, can help move the agenda forward.
Exactly. In the last 10 seconds we have, why did you get involved in this very fascinating issue and working on really important projects?
Well, what happened to me was that I'd been working in microfinance for about 14 years, and it's wonderful work. You really feel as if you're making a difference in people's lives. But what would happen is that I would go into the huts of poor women around the world, and they even though they were a 10th cycle loan client, so they'd paid back loans 10 times, they still didn't have access to clean energy or water, and that seemed to me be a huge failing in microfinance. And so I started this organization to address that problem.
And it's a problem we need to address. But Niki Armacost with ARC Finance, keep up the good work, and I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.